Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Geisler. I'm one of the co-chairs of the CML Community Advisory Board and one of the co-founders of the CML Advocates Network. What I'm planning to do in the next couple of minutes is actually explain what community advisory boards are and why we hold them as a CML community and what we have actually achieved in doing so. First of all, what is a community advisory board by definition? In medicine's development, a community advisory board is a group of patient representatives that serve as a link between the patient community and researchers. And there's the area of clinical development, and there a CAB may review trial protocols, may monitor the conduct of clinical trials, and help to teach the community about clinical trials. The community advisory board model has also been implemented in areas such as access to treatment and diagnostics, as well as policy making. So why do we have CML community advisory boards in the area of chronic myeloid leukemia? We think that research is key towards better outcomes, but very often the trials that we see are done and implemented and designed without patient input. They do not really deliver on the core unmet needs of patients, or they might not deliver patient relevant data, for example, patient reported outcomes or information about quality of life. And quite often they are run in the wrong countries from a patient perspective, or they do not recruit, and no trials that actually are able to deliver result will help any patient. The care pathways in CML are often not reflecting true patients' needs and real life situations, and they largely differ region by region. Access to treatment and diagnostics is very often suboptimal or non-existent because treatment and access are very often in the focus on the most attractive big markets, not where highest unmet need is, which might be in low and middle income countries. Pharma's patient information often doesn't answer the questions that patients have or their relatives, or they might not be fit for purpose by images, by text, by language, and so on. So very often patient input is really crucial to have proper patient information. The advisory boards that the pharmaceutical industry sometimes convenes are often not meaningful to patients. They put topics on the agenda that are important to the company, but that might not always respond to the questions that the patient community has. And of course, but quite often we as patient advocates have the question about direction. So does the input that patients provide in these meetings really provide an input on where the company is heading? And often we don't know what is happening afterwards. So we do not get feedback about what has the input and the feedback that the patient community has provided actually done to the company, done to its decisions, and done to the direction of a clinical trial and access strategy. So very often patient centricity, which is heard everywhere and which is a big motto everywhere, is often mainly a mission statement, but not really implemented where difficult decisions are being taken. So how do CML CABs work? We have actually inherited the model from the HIV community because they have invented community advisory boards about 20 years ago. It's a strategic committee or meeting that discusses research, access to treatment and care, and collaborative efforts. It's a key strategic tool to influence the companies on patients' needs in all those areas. And it's a model of a united patient community where the community from different regions, different backgrounds, different organizations actually speak with a single voice and provide their feedback. This is actually how a CAB works. The patient community invites participants from the company or academia. So they host the meeting and they actually establish a two-way dialogue where the patient set the agenda. The patient community selects the most important topics and also addresses those that are most meaningful to the community. Of course, they respect confidentiality because if you discuss about trial protocols or similar things, they really need to be held in confidence because, of course, there are competitive issues if the information about future planned trials were surfacing with competitors of companies. So, of course, we need to have a trust and an open dialogue, and this would not be possible if everything that was discussed in such meeting would actually surface. We report back to our members through our regional representatives and also with public reports. And we also want to make sure with the CAP office to actually have follow-up with the companies or the researchers to make sure we're not only talking, we're really doing things afterwards with what we discussed. And of course, one of the very important factors of that is that we build additional patient leaders, because the CAB is not only a meeting, it also trains people about these different areas of research, access and care, and also collaborative issues. So of course, that increases also the knowledge by us meeting and discussing these very important topics. We grow additional leaders in the network. So how does a typical setup of a CAB meeting work? This is a face-to-face version. Of course, in these COVID times, we also have virtual meetings, but usually you have first a training day, and then you have different slots where you meet different companies. On day 2, for example, you have a morning session with one company and an afternoon session with another company. They're all firewalled. So these meetings are in confidence with company A and then in confidence with company B. And sometimes we have the third day with the same scheme. And sometimes we also merge 2 sessions and do a full day meeting if we have so many important topics to discuss with the company. And this all sounds great, but it's really hard work, because we actually must meet everybody on the CAB who attends a meeting, must be on the whole meeting from the very beginning of the training until the last session. The training is mandatory because we feel we need to increase our capacity and knowledge in driving forward the different topics. And that's why everybody needs to attend for the whole time. The preparatory session also, which you can't see on the graph, but they're preparatory sessions where we try to align on the topic. So what's the opinion, what's the diversity of opinion of our community? Because we, of course, want to represent the community as a whole and not just single opinions. Based on a protocol, we actually run this meeting on a standardized way. And we have actually inherited the protocol from the HIV community, developed it further in terms of what's the purpose of the meeting, what's our governance model, what does CAB membership mean, how are decisions being taken, how do we deal with confidentiality, and how do we do minutes. So we actually have kind of a protocol for these sessions. Why is confidentiality so important? I mentioned before, we want to discuss issues of highest relevance to both the patient community as well as the companies, because we want to cause impact and we want to induce action on both sides. Without confidentiality, pharma would not talk to us and provide confidential information. But of course, not everything is confidential in these meetings. There are confidential issues like corporate strategies, development pipelines of products, unpublished data which has not been provided at any meeting, commercially sensitive information, as well as the discussions and the persons that attend a meeting. But there's also non-conventional things, because we actually want to be advocates and we want to run projects and actually liaise with patients. And we could not do that if we were not free to discuss about concepts, might be treatment concepts, might be service concepts, might be approaches to patient care. If we talk about advocacy strategies or patient information, or the positions and decisions that we take in the CAB, these are public things, because we need to be advocates and we need to talk about what we think are the best concepts and approaches and advocacy strategies and what is the best patient information. So that's usually non-confidential. So what have we done? We've held 11 CML CAB meetings in total with 21 sessions, because we had multiple companies in some of the meetings in the time from 2016 when we started the CABs until 2020. You can actually see a list here of the different companies that we met over the years and the months, but I don't want to highlight the companies here, which are important partners for the CML community. But the training sessions, because you can actually see, and I was referring to that earlier on, we want to train the capacity and the capability of our patient advocates. And that's why we did training on the drug development process, on how to run CABs, on how to work with industry in a safe and transparent and also independent manner, on patient-reported outcome and quality of life measurement instruments. So how do we measure that in clinical studies? We also have a discussion about cure. So we have a lot of training usually attached to these CAB meetings to make sure that we are all operating on the best knowledge and we actually are at equal eye level in terms of what we need to know to have good discussions about, for example, clinical trials or access strategies. Training is so important. So how are we set up as a CAP community? So here you see the CML CAP team. So Pat Garcia Gonzalez and I are co-chairs. We have Dennis as the executive director and Nicole as the CML CAP officer. And you can see we have different representatives from different regions. Those are the regions that we have in CML Advocates Network: Western Europe and Israel, Eastern Europe, North America, Latin America, Africa and Middle East, and Asia Pacific. And you can see different people and faces that I think many of you know well, because they've been in advocacy for very long and have had great impact on what we did. And of course, this is the status of October 2020, because we're expanding the group of CML CAP members. But what is quite impressive, if you just take the individuals, even though they represent the region, they represent the community, they altogether have more than 270 lived CML patient years themselves, apart from all the contacts and all the experience they have from the patients in their organizations in their region. So what are the strategic priorities? We had a strategic setting of the CAP members some time ago, and also the CML steering committee has discussed that. And we said for the current time, we actually have 3 different priorities. One is really about research, and we set 3 priorities there. Our participation in clinical trials, mainly low and middle income countries, because we feel that patients need to be able to join trials, and they need to be able to join trials, especially in those areas where research is most needed. Second priority is actually the increase of quality of life of CML patients. And you can see that we have a couple of subtopics. Of course, side effect management is a topic, but we also see therapy-free remission. So being able to stop therapy after years of remission is for us mainly a quality of life issue, because people can go off therapy. And the third strategic priority, which is really, really important to us and an increased need, is the achieve true cure. So really to cure CML, that people can live a long life without therapy and diagnostics. And then the second bucket of things is actually priority area access, because we want to improve access to treatment, and we want to improve access to monitoring, because every patient who is in need should have access to adequate therapy and diagnostics. And we're far away from that. So it's a huge priority for us as a CML community to improve on access. There's, of course, a couple of strategies that play into these strategic priorities, like increased sharing of experience between CAP members, like the level up of knowledge of CAP members to become experts, and the involvement in design of all relevant CML clinical trials. So what did we discuss with companies in our 20 CML CAPs and the hematology CAP in these 4 years? You can see the different buckets. In clinical research, we discussed development pipelines of companies, planned clinical trials or ongoing clinical trials, the path to cure. We discussed about stopping treatment, like therapy-free remission and the different approaches to that. We discussed about patient-reported outcomes and how to improve quality of life of CML patients. We discussed about pediatric use of a treatment. We discussed about drug safety and side effect management. So how to best deal with the different side effects that the treatments have, and also some side effects and safety issues that different therapies have. We discussed about food effects when people need to fast when they're taking therapies, and different approaches on that. We discussed about the selection of countries and sites for research. So that's the clinical research bit. And then in the access bit, we have discussed about the value proposition of a treatment and access strategies in different regions. And in the collaboration area, we discussed about educational material, about falsified drugs that appeared in CML some time ago, and also collaboration barriers between different stakeholders in the patient community, and also compliance issues that makes our life in the collaboration sometimes a bit difficult. And then evidence generation. So how can we generate evidence that really proves what patients really need? So what were the overall outcomes? We just discussed the drug development pipelines of the companies. We were invited to investigator meetings as a follow-up to that. We had some impact on the trial design, some additional trial sites or countries that were included in sites. Also, the use of quality of life and patient-reported outcome measurements, feedback on the challenges of drug administration, drug intake, and so on. We addressed access issues, and we made inequalities and real-world access issues of patients outside of the usual big markets more understandable to the researchers and companies, and provided input into corporate access programs. We addressed collaboration issues like compliance, financial support, local collaboration for the groups in the different countries that are members of the CML Advocates Network. And we also contributed to the design of complemented patient services. For example, the companies that wanted to launch patient support programs or wanted to implement patient information. So we provided input into those. And of course, we trained CML CAP members, which has given our community a huge boost because we had more and more educated advocates, because there's only so much a small number of people can do. And if you enlarge the base of people that really know about research and access strategies and access programs, you can go to the different committees and meetings and have a very strong patient voice at those. And one thing that we did with other hematology organizations was the EU Hematology CAP, or HemCAP. It was organized by the European Reference Network, EuroBloodNet's EPAC representatives in 2018. And we brought together leaders of the 12 pan-European hematology patient organizations. And we invited 8 companies at the same time and asked the companies actually to present about their strategy towards effective patient engagement in R&D, towards evidence generation by patient organizations to improve decision-making, and also overcoming compliance and legal hurdles in the collaboration. And each company could actually present their concept, and the community, the patient community, provided feedback on the strategy and how the collaboration or the work could be improved from a patient perspective. That was a highly effective meeting. So as a conclusion, the HIV community has introduced CAPs and has done a tremendous job in introducing the model of patient-led community advisory boards to provide patient input into what researchers and people that are connected to access can do. The CML community was the first one to adopt that model and use it in cancer. And then it was widely used with the HemCAP and hematology. The myeloma community, the melanoma community, and lymphoma community has actually also used the CAP model very successfully in recent times. The CML CAP has become our key strategic tool for the CML patient community to work with the companies and academic researchers in a trusted two-way dialogue, but on our priorities, on the priorities that the patient community think is most important. And that is very important. So if you want to know more about the CML CAP, please contact your regional member of the CML steering committee, or our CML CAP officer, Nicole, or our director, Dennis Costello, about the CAP outcomes, and to provide input on the agenda, on the topics, on the nominations of CAP candidates. You can find the address on the bottom, either the email address info@cmladvocates.net, or you can also go to our website under cmladvocates.net/cml-cap. You can find more information about our community advisory boards. Thank you so much.